our line. So I'm going to draw those on the wrong side of the fabric, and I love this little ruler for just lining up and drawing those lines. I want to make sure that my line that's in the center of the ruler is right on the two corners of the block. I'm going to hold it carefully in place, and I'm just going to draw a line. I want to drawing away from the edge of the fabric and not go off or start too much. I don't want to frame my corners.
And one thing that's funny, you were holding your fingers just perfectly. Sometimes when I use this ruler, I hold it too close and my fingers get in there and then I bloop. So I have to be careful. And you have to hold it tight on there.
You do. And it does take a little bit of practice. I tend to kind of spread my fingers out to hold it on this big of a span to be able to hold it firmly in place. To draw the other side, unless you can turn your mat or turn where you're standing, you want to just turn your square around. It's helpful to draw on a mat as well. It's going to hold your square in place and keep it from sliding. So I'm going to draw off on one end and then draw down on the other end. And that kind of helps keep the fabric from fraying.
This is a nice crisp piece. Do you starch? Are you a starcher?
I'm not, but I'm also not a pre-washer.
Neither am I. We can talk about that for hours. Yeah. It's a big controversy, you know.
It really is. And there's pros and cons with it.
Absolutely.
But when you don't pre-wash, if you wash out the finish.
Exactly.
And so by not pre-washing it, I still have that finish, and that's what makes it nice and crisp.
And I can't wait. I mean, when I get home from the fabric store, are you kidding? I'm not washing. I'm jumping in.
Well, I used to pre-wash, and then I decided life was too short. So we can discuss that. That is a long debate. All right. So then you need to draw lines in the other direction, and you're just going to do the same thing. You're going to draw two lines in the other direction so that you end up with lines that are drawn, such as I have here. I'm going to pair that piece right sides together with my dark square, and then I pin them, and I want to pin them where I'm not going to be sewing.
Great. And you don't always pin, but you say when you need to.
When I need to, I pin.
Yes. Well, I'm going to sew just a little bit of this because there's something to be said about the sewing part. Can you tell me what's important?
It's important when you're sewing these units that you sew along the line and not directly on the line. That will allow you to have a little bit of space so that when you press your the one fabric to the seam allowance side, that you're going to compensate for the thread.
Right. Yeah, it really makes a difference. It doesn't seem like it would, but it does.
It does, I think.
All right. I got a little excited.
Well, that's okay. But that's okay because then as you're trimming your units, you're going to be able to, it's not going to be a big deal. It's not going to be too small. It's better to have it too big than too small. You can always trim it down.
Right.
So we've sewn on all four lines in this unit, and I'm going to show you how to cut it apart. And when I'm doing that, I'm going to be sure and put on my gloves so I protect my hand. I certainly don't want to cut my hand.
No. Have you ever done it? You probably have.
I actually have not.
What?
I have trimmed a tiny sliver of skin, or maybe even put a nick in a fingernail, but I'm knock on wood.
Yeah, exactly.
I did it.
I did it once. Once is enough.
I tell you, I don't want to do that.
No, you won't. If you haven't yet, you won't.
So I'm going to put the line on the ruler, the 1/4 inch line on the ruler, on the sewn line, and then I'm just going to cut all the way across. Normally I would cut vertically and horizontally first, but since I didn't, you can do it the other way. Just don't want to move your squares.
And yes, exactly. And it's a little counterintuitive. You don't slice through both thread lines. You're slicing between them. And that's something that instructions are really good for. So look at your instructions, and for more information, go to Pons&Porter.com, and you can get more information there.
So I'm really making 4 cuts. I'm lining up the 3-inch line on my ruler because that has to correspond with the size of the square, and all that information is online. And I didn't quite get that one cut, but there we go. Great. And then I'm going to come back and cut this between the 2 squares.
Okay.
And really, it's a little. You've already sewn it, so you don't have to cut it exactly on the 1/4 inch line.
Right. Another beautiful part of this. Oh, you do this too?
Yeah.
You don't get all the way through? Don't feel bad?
Scissors handy.
Exactly.
And then when you're pressing these, you want to be really careful when you're pressing because you're pressing on a bias edge. So just hold it open, let the iron do the work, and just gently press them over.
and toward the dark.
And towards the dark.
Especially important because we have white fabric.
Correct.
Yeah.
And we don't want that dark fabric to shadow through underneath the lighter fabric.
Right.
So you're going to trim the dog ears. Once these are all done, we would trim the dog ears. And I've already done that with this unit.
Beautiful.
It's already trimmed and ready for the next step.
You have so many. You have 8. You have 8 through that. Amazing.
And really, it's sewing 4 lines, and you have 8 units. I need that one.
Oh, sorry.
That's all right.
I'm taking it away.
Yeah.
I'm speeding.
And I'm just going to lay out the next pieces that go with this unit. These are the navy triangles.
Great.
And they're going to be sewn to both sides of the light background triangle.
And the tip here, or the instruction here, is to line up this side of the triangle flush with your half square triangle.
Correct.
So this dog ear is going to hang off. So don't try to, eyeball it in the center. You want it just like that.
And you're going to sew that, press it to the dark, sew the next side on, press it to the dark, so that you end up with a unit that looks like this, and you have your 2 little dog ears down here.
Somebody asked me, when do you trim your dog ears? And I think what I said is just before you sew it to something else. You can trim whenever you feel like it. You can make all these and trim them, but just before you sew something else, you need to trim them down.
Yes, before you're sewing against that seam.
Exactly.
Yeah. The other part of this unit now has these 2 red triangles that go at the top here. And here, what we're lining up is the point. And I think you were going to sew that so that people could see, because you're going to end up with dog ears at the top of this unit.
And this is your 1/4 inch seam.
This is your 1/4 inch seam. And I normally start at the point. Because
you start here?
I start at this point. So even if I have to turn it over, because then I'm going to be able to see this cross seam. And I really am concerned about it lining up down here and letting whatever happens at this top, just let it happen.
Nice. Okay, I'm going to move my needle over a little bit. Okay. All right. Got my 1/4 inch seam, and sometimes I'll put a piece of tape down to have more of a 1/4 inch seam showing, and
it's always the trickiness of finding that.
Exactly.
And sometimes it's helpful not only put a piece of tape, sometimes your presser foot will have that 1/4 inch, and you can sew along the edge of your presser foot. You need to find that spot on your machine that gives you that perfect 1/4 inch.
Exactly. And that's why, sewing a test seam before you start jumping into your patchwork is a good idea.
It is a good idea. And when we say perfect 1/4 inch, it's really a scant, which is maybe a thread or 2.
Exactly.
Because we really need to compensate for the pressing.
Great. Yeah, it looks pretty good.
So here's the unit all finished. And this is when I would trim it and get rid of all those dog ears.
Yeah, all at once.
All at once.
When I get all my pieces ready, I sit down and I chain piece a bunch of them, and then I grab a chair over at my ironing board and press all of them and snip all those all at once.
Yeah, it makes it so much easier.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, the next unit we're going to make is the square and a square unit. And here again, we're going to draw a line, but this time we're going to draw our line from corner to corner.
Okay.
Instead of putting it on the line and drawing on both sides, this line just goes from corner to corner. And just line it up and draw that line all the way across. I already have one drawn here.
Because it's white, something that's not too dark, no marker that's too dark, pencil I think is perfect.
Yeah. A mechanical pencil works really well for something like this.
Great.
So with this unit, we're really just going to place the square in the corner, and you want to line up those raw edges. And Mary, sometimes even though the line is in the center, I found if I turn the square around, sometimes it lines up better than the other time.
Okay.
I don't know why that is, but
it just is. We were talking about a gal in class, my class too. I've had a class too where you do that instead,
and it's sewn, and that's not gonna work.
It's just not gonna work
because
it's going into nothing.
Yeah,
right.
You're not gonna end up with a triangle.
You won't.
So after you get that positioned correctly, here again we're gonna sew next to the line, not directly on the line.
Right.
And in fact, I like to sew because I like to chain piece. I sew 2 on, and then I can chain piece. I can sew them through. Do all my units where I've got 2 squares.
And it's important, we were talking about this earlier, you can't do these 2 at once because when you fold back, it's that buckle, it's not going to work. So do opposite corners.
Opposite corners. And before you trim, you want to make sure you open this out and check it, make sure it comes all the way to this corner and that these edges are lined up. I like to trim my seam allowance from this little extra part out here. Those are good pieces. You can make half square triangle units out of those.
True. Mom and I were doing a show once, and she showed all these half square triangles that she did without even getting up. I mean, she trimmed them and just sewed them through.
And use them as starters.
Yeah.
So that when you're sewing, chain sewing, you can sew those as you're making your other project.
And if you put stashing on a quilt, you could have those as little cornerstones.
You could. Clever is that. But just make sure first that it does come all the way out to the corner.
Exactly.
All right. So the next step would be to trim this, and we want to trim. I'm not going to actually cut, but I'll just show you. You're going to put your ruler again on the 1/4 inch line, and you're just going to cut that so that you end up with your 1/4 inch seam allowance. And then you're going to press these open. It's very important that you press after you've trimmed those pieces.
And sometimes putting the rotary cutter down, it seems like, I could just cut it with scissors. But if you're doing those extra little units, you should use your rotary cutter so it's really accurate.
Okay. And sometimes I will stack them and cut maybe 2 at a time because I don't really have to have an exact 1/4 inch seam allowance, but I still put a ruler on it and use my cutter. It's much faster to do it that way. So once those are trimmed and pressed, I'm going to sew 2 more on opposite corners, following the same way we talked about before. Open these out, and I'll just go ahead and press these. Even though I haven't trimmed them, I'll go ahead and press it so that you can see the unit. And again, I'm being very careful that I'm letting the iron do the work.
Don't stretch it out.
And I'm not stretching it. This is on the bias. Even though we've sewn a square to a square, we've sewn along the bias edge.
And one thing for beginners, it's like, it's not to the edge. The point isn't matching up to the edge. But remember, that's your seam allowance. So when you sew it to something else, it turns out just right. So don't be afraid that you have extra room. You want that.
You want that. You want at least 1/4 inch. Exactly. So now that we've made all the units for that block, we can lay out the block. And it starts with squares in the corners, and then our side units. And I do lay out my block.
Oh, I do too. Every time.
We're visual people, and we really need to see things visually. And so I lay out every block, make sure it's laid out correctly before I start sewing it together.
I have to do that too. I can't just sort of think, I need to sew these to these, because it's so much, it's so easy to flip them if you don't lay it out, And somebody told me a lot can happen between the ironing board and the sewing machine. A lot can go on. So I have it close to my machine.
And if you have a pet, they'll often, help you with those.
Exactly. Right, exactly.
So then we're just sewing it into rows. We're going to sew these squares to the side units, the side units to the square and square unit. Sew this row together, and then sew both rows together to make the finished block.
And you've got X's. You've got X's to help you get those accurate.
Correct.
So
and you want to match this point. So you want to match this point to this point. And I use a positioning pin to do that, which is just really sticking one pin. I'll take a pin and stick it all the way through, and then I put a pin on each side. And that just helps hold that point in place.
That's why your quilts look so good.
Well, I think the little time you take in preparation for doing things saves you time in the long run.
Absolutely. Okay, so that's the first block. That's a little more involved. The second one goes more quickly. So let's take a look at this one.
All right. So for the second block, we need to make flying geese units.
Okay.
And the little trick for making 4 identical flying geese units with no waste is to use a large square and 4 small squares. Here again, we're going to take the ruler, and I just love this ruler because you can draw on both sides of it. It just makes life so much easier. And I'm just going to position it corner to corner with the line on each corner and draw on each side of the line. With this type of fabric, sometimes it's hard to see your line. You may find with a dark fabric that you're going to want to use a pencil that has a white lead to it, that's a chalk pencil, or you want to use a very dark pencil or marker of some sort that you can see the line clearly. That's important.
And sometimes there's white in the fabric, and white marker isn't that great, so play with what you need to use. Okay, so let's lay these out on the square.
So it starts with laying these in the corner. And you're going to lay them opposite each other in the corner. Okay. And this is one time when I would pin. I'm going to place pins on each side, pointing towards. I don't want to sew over those pins, so I'm just going to point them towards where I'm going to sew. I recently heard from a sewing machine manufacturer. They said, it's not sewing over the pin that does damage to receipt. It's hitting the pin.
Oh, yeah, that's it. And you can't really control that. So
you can't control that. So we always want to pin or remove our pins and not sew over them.
And, in the interest of time, I don't think I'm going to sew this today, but you do need to watch, the overlap. Make sure you don't get caught up in there.
Correct.
Correct. Careful.
And you can chain piece these as well, so that you can sew on one side if you're making several units, and just chain piece those together.
Great.
So here's one that's already sewn, so that you can see we've used the red thread, so it's easy for you to see what that looks like. And these I need to cut this one apart so that I can show you the placement and the pressing on this, because this one is a little bit trickier.
Same principle,
The same principle. We're putting the ruler on the line. I'm going to press harder this time.
Okay. Very nice. Very nice.
Sometimes we think we need a new blade when in fact we just need to press harder.
I love a new blade though. It's like butter.
It's
cutting through butter.
It's like that little treat you give yourself. All right. So when you're pressing these, you're going to have these two triangles. And again, although you're just going to press it, but you can see here in the middle, you've got these ones that want to kind of fight each other.
Sure.
So you have to press it open and then get up here and get to the next one.
Great.
And still, your biased edges, so you want to be careful about that and not stretch those as you're pressing.
Okay.
So once those are pressed, and you're going to end up with two of these units because they're identical.
Great.
You're going to take your marked squares. Here you've got your marked squares again. Lay that right on the corner, and you'll notice this time it's going to hang over. And that's fine.
That's fine.
I would pin it. Yeah. Pin that one, and then you end up with units that look like beautiful once it's sewn.
Yeah.
And here again, we're going to cut in between the units.
Great.
And that's how you get your 4 flying geese units. Now, let me grab the units here so that we can lay out this block.
Great.
And here's our finished flying geese units.
Oh, they're so crisp and nice.
And I trimmed the dog ears on them.
Oh, and this is another one. Be careful. Didn't you say you did that?
I did, see?
Oh, you did it just now.
I did it just now. Because I like Star Quilt.
Yeah, I caught it, Nancy. It's amazing. Yeah.
I was telling Mary that I told me to get her a Star Block and had to unsew a few of them.
My friend sewed a block in wrong. She said, "This is my quilt." She was showing it. It looks so great. And I said, "Oh, that's funny. It turned out the other way. That's kind of cute." She had sewn the whole thing, quilted it, put the binding on, didn't see it.
Oh no!
Isn't that funny?
It happens.
So there's the secondary
block. And again, it's just putting the units together into rows like we did with the other block, and then sewing those rows together.
Beautiful. And let's take a look at these 2 blocks finished, and we'll take another look at the quilt. So those are our two blocks in this Quilt of Valor. And let's take a look at Bountiful Stars again. How did you quilt this quilt? Or did you have a long armor?
I did. This is one time when I had a long armor quilt for me. I have a friend where I live, and she'll do quilts very quickly for me. And so I asked her to do this one for me. And I asked her to do the center design with something that would be appropriate for being a Quilt of Valor, and then to quilt the borders in something different. So it isn't really an edge-to-edge design. And it's kind of a semi-custom, what they call semi-custom, and it just gives it a little bit different.
I love those curves, on the side. It's beautiful and not too challenging once you get those units and that quick piece method.
Yes.
Fantastic. Nancy, thank you so much.
Oh, thank you, Mary. It's been so much fun.
Come back anytime.
I'd love to. Grab a pencil. Tips and other useful information coming up next.
Well, our first tip comes from Ohio, Orville, Ohio. Lisa McClure has another use for pillowcases. We give quilts in pillowcases sometimes, but she uses a pillowcase to store her batting. She'll put the batting into the pillowcase, and it keeps that cat hair off of the batting. She's got a cat.
And Kitty can still sit up here, but keeps the batting clean.
Sure, the kitty would like that.
Yes.
If I was a kitty, I would.
Yeah. Wow. That's great. Here's an idea from Pamela Edwards, and this is a little medication holder or weekly medication holder. They come in different sizes, and they're really cute with these little doors. She says she has a sewing machine case that has a place for the feet, but they tend to fall out. So she gets a pill container, keeps her presser feed in there. Also, there are sizes like this one that are perfect for a bobbin. See, there's the bobbin in there. And sometimes they're clear, too, on top, so you can see what's in there. But it's a great way to store any little object and keep them separate so they don't tangle.
It's true, and you can get really big ones, too,
Yep.
so you can keep lots of things. Those are really good tools for us.
Yes.
Sewers, quilters.
Yes.
Okay, this is a safety glove. We use it a lot on the show. We should use it at home. We use it to keep our fingers safe when we're cutting with our rotary cutter. But you also have to change your blade on your rotary cutter with frequency. I'm a big fan of changing the blade probably too often, more than I need to.
It's like a miracle when you put the new blade in. You're like, why do I wait so long?
But when you put the new blade in, you can wear your safety glove then as well. You're handling the blade even more closely sometimes then.
So if you're right-handed, you're probably going to want to put the glove on your right hand. Whatever hand you're going to hold that blade is the one you want to protect.
Just a safety measure.
Okay, this is a great tip from Joanne Touchstone from Petaluma, California. And I have one of these. I actually have a bigger one at home. But this is one of those specialized coffee creamer bottles, and it's very easy to open and refill. And this is great if you like steam, like we do on our iron. You can put the water in this, and it's a very easy pour. So, and it has a nice little.
Yeah, Mom, you use tap water, right? Just
an iron expert told me tap water, not distilled water. You can use purified water, but the distilled water, ask a scientist, but that's not the best for an iron.
Okay, great. Tap water is an extra tip.
Yeah, tap water, yeah. These are great tips. Thank you very much for sending them in and sharing them with everybody. If you have a tip you'd like to share, you can mail it to us at Pons&Porter, P.O. Box 171, Winterset, Iowa, 50273. Or if you'd like to email it, go to the tip section of our website,